Hello UPSC aspirants. So in this video, we are going to cover the articles of PRS and PIB. Now PRS is basically a legislative research. So they publish monthly policy review and it contains significant amount of information which is very important from UPSC prelims as well as from the perspective of UPSC mains. So we are going to cover it from that way. Okay, now let's start. So the first article is related to industrial production. Again, one more thing, you may feel that the font size is quite small. Don't worry about that. I'm going to explain each and everything. This is just for the reference. So first is related to IIP. What is IIP? That is Index of Industrial Production. In a very simple sense, how much we are producing in our industries. Okay, so if there is a good growth in IIP, that simply shows that okay, we have produced a significant amount. So higher production simply means higher employment opportunities. That's one thing. Second thing, as far as IIP is concerned, core sectors such as crude, coal, cement, natural gas, fertilizer, these constitute roughly 40% of this IIP. Apart from that, understand one more thing. If we further classify IIP, so three major constitute are there. One is manufacturing, second is mining, and third is electricity. That is manufacturing, mining, and electricity. These are three major components of IIP. So that's first thing you need to keep in mind. Next article is related to the ordinance which has been issued by the government through president to increase the number of judges in the Supreme Court. Now understand how examiner is going to ask question from this. So examiner can simply frame a statement that the number of judges or the strength of the Supreme Court cannot be increased through ordinance route, or simply statement can say that it can be done only through the Constitutional Amendment Act. So you need to understand how this entire thing can be done. So especially there is a legislation for that purpose and that has been amended. What is the name of that legislation? That is Supreme Court Number of Judges Act of 1956. So the total number of judges will be from 33 to 37. Now it is important to note one more thing. As of now, we have roughly 5 crore cases pending in our judicial system. Roughly 88,000 cases are pending in the Supreme Court alone. So that's why the number of judges has been increased so that these cases can be disposed of in a speedy manner. Because right to speedy trial is there as per Husnaira Khatun case. So in a very simple sense, we usually say that justice delayed is justice denied. So keeping that perspective in mind, this is being done. Now you can use it in your governance answer. You can use it in social justice answer, that how government is trying to make sure that there is a timely justice delivery. Next topic is related to the rules has been notified for the 4 labor codes. Now let me simplify. See, in our country, if we want to promote more and more investment, we have to simplify the rules and regulation. This is basically referred as ease of doing business. The economic survey had highlighted that because of excessive regulation, there is a regulatory cholesterol. What is regulatory cholesterol? Because of excessive regulation, the industrial growth is adversely impacted. Just like the cholesterol blocked the blood supply, excessive regulation blocked the growth. So keeping that in mind, the central government has simplified these labor legislations into 4 labor codes. Now, why we are using the term code? Because ultimately state government are going to implement them. So the labor ministry has simplified them and the rules are notified for that purpose. So there are 4 labor codes: code on social security, code on wages, then there is a code on occupational safety, and then there is a code on industrial relation. Now let's have a look at them one by one. So first is related to occupational safety. As per that, the weekly working hours in any establishment should not exceed more than, or basically should not exceed 48 hours per week. So keep this number in mind, because examiner can simply change this data, or maybe can simply say that okay, even more than 48 hours is allowed. So keep that in mind. This is weekly limit. That's one thing. Second, as per the Social Security Code, the gig workers, those workers who do not have a traditional employee-employer relation, in a very simple sense, for example, workers of, let's say, these delivery boys. Now, they are not the permanent employee of any particular company. So that's why companies say that why we should take care of the Social Security benefit of these workers, because they are not working full-time for us. On the other hand, government is saying, no, you will have to take care of the Social Security benefit, but if the workers fulfill certain condition. First condition is that such a gig worker need to work at least 90 days with a single aggregator, or at least 120 days across multiple aggregators in a particular year. Let me simplify that. Let's say there is a person, ABC is there. This person is working with, let's say, Zomato as well as with Swiggy. But this person has worked only 60 days in the entire year. So this person will not be eligible for the benefits. On the other hand, there is another person who has worked, let's say, more than 90 days with one single company, or more than 120 days with multiple companies. In that case, that person will be eligible for the social security benefits under this code. That is the meaning. Now, as far as the code on wages is concerned, basically in this case, the central government is going to fix the minimum wage or floor wage. What is the floor wage? Floor wage is minimum wage. The wages can be higher than that, but they cannot be lower than this. Okay. The central government also need to update them on regular basis, and the timeline is that it must be updated at least once in the 5 years. So that is the important provision. That simply means fixing of the floor wage by the central government with revision at intervals not exceeding 5 years. That simply means at least within 5 years there must be at least one revision. Next is related to Viksit Bharat Ji Ramji. So basically in this case, just remember this one thing, that the scheme will be effective from 1st of July 2026. Now, if you are preparing for any state pieces, even in case of UPSC also, UPSC can frame a statement that the scheme became effective from 1st of April. No, it became effective, or it will be effective from 1st of July 2026. So date is quite important. Second thing is that it is basically a replacement of MG Narega. Third thing is that in this case, the central government will provide some resources, and rest of the resources need to be arranged by the states. And that's why various states opposed this as well. Now understand, in this case, there are two important institutions. Number one institution is the National Level Steering Committee, and this committee will be under the Secretary of Department of Rural Development. This steering committee will be under secretary. So just easy way to remember, S for steering, S for the secretary of Department of Rural Development, which is under Rural Development Ministry. There is one more council, and that is Central Council. So Central Council is going to monitor the implementation, and this steering committee is going to recommend the decision related to allocation. So two bodies are there. One is steering committee, one is council. Council will be headed by the Rural Development Minister. So easy way to remember, council will be headed by the minister, and the steering committee will be headed by the Secretary of Rural Development. In both cases, how examiner can simply swap this information? Examiner can simply say that it will be under Ministry of Labor and Employment. That seems logical, because ultimately we are trying to provide employment opportunity, but please remember it is under Rural Development Ministry. Second statement, what examiner can do, that it will be applicable in rural as well as in urban areas. Now that is a homework for you. Will it be applicable in urban areas? Next is related to the guidelines for the implementation of BHAVYA scheme. Now understand what is BHAVYA scheme. So basically the objective of this scheme is to focus on industrial development. What is the full form of BHAVYA? That is Bharat Audyogik Vikas Yojana. So as a part of this scheme, the government is focusing on the industrial park. 100 industrial park will be emphasized, and the implementation for this scheme is going to be from 2026-27 to 2031-32. So this is how we want to focus on the industries, so that we can promote, or we can increase the contribution of our manufacturing sector. Please remember one thing, since last 1 decade or so, the contribution of manufacturing is more or less same. We had different initiatives, for example, Make in India, for example, Startup, Stand Up, and various other initiatives such as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, PLI. But the problem is that the contribution of manufacturing sector in our GDP is more or less stagnant, and it is roughly 17 to 18%. So that's why the government is emphasizing on this part, so that we can create more employment opportunities. Next is related to the foreign investment in insurance sector. So understand, in this case, what is happening? The government has simplified the rules for the foreign investment in insurance sector to increase the coverage of insurance. So now up to 100% FDI is allowed in insurance sector. What is FDI? Foreign direct investment. However, please remember one thing, this limit or this scenario will not be applicable in case of LIC. LIC have its own statute. In a very simple sense, it is driven or it is regulated by some other legislation. The name of that legislation is LIC Act. So as per that, there are different limitation on LIC, and that limitation will be 20%. So examiner can simply frame a statement that the entire insurance sector including LIC will now have 100% FDI. In that case, this statement will be incorrect. Next is related to CSR, that is corporate social responsibility. Let me simplify it first. Corporate social responsibility, in a very simple sense, corporates or the companies have certain responsibilities towards society. They need to do something for society. In a very simple sense, it is referred as giving back to the society. Okay. Now, in our country, this CSR is regulated as per the provisions of Companies Act. That simply means the government has mandated CSR activity for certain category of the companies. Now, in that CSR, recently certain things were amended, and that's why this entire issue was in news. Now let's understand it. Let's say you are a company. Okay, you have to spend some money on CSR. So now, after the amendment, you can purchase the bond issued by some NGO. I'm oversimplifying it. So NGO is there. Let's say there is an NGO which is working for the orphan kids. Okay, this NGO is working. It need money, so it can issue bond. You are a company, you can purchase those bond. But there are two important things in this case. Since it is CSR, it is not an economic activity, it is CSR. So in this case, this bond will have zero interest. Interest is often referred as coupon. So that's why the term zero coupon. Zero coupon basically means, in a very simple sense, zero interest. Zero coupon and zero principal. Let's say you purchased a bond worth 1 lakh rupee. Okay. Now you have invested 1 lakh rupee. The NGO received 1 lakh rupee, which it is going to use for the orphan kids. You will not get interest on this bond. You will not get the principal amount back. That is referred as zero coupon, zero principal bond. Who is going to issue it? The NGO is going to issue. Who is going to buy it? The corporates are going to buy, and that will be considered as a part of CSR itself. So that is the entire change in this case. Now let's have a look at this. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs amended the 7th schedule. Now from exam perspective, two important things are there. A, examiner can swap the ministry that let's say Ministry of Finance has issued these guidelines. No, this Companies Act itself, this is regulated through the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So if you want to register a new company, basically you need to register as per the provisions of Companies Act, and that is implemented through MCA, that is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. That's one thing. Second thing, examiner can simply ask the schedule as well. So it is mentioned, the activities are mentioned in the 7th schedule of Companies Act. Okay, now read, the amendment provide that the subscription to a zero coupon. What was the meaning of coupon? Coupon simply means interest. Zero coupon, zero principal instrument will be eligible corporate social responsibility. Okay, this applies to such instrument issued by not-for-profit organization. Not-for-profit organization basically means those organizations which are working for some social cause. They are not working for the profit. So they are going to issue such bond. Companies will purchase such bond. Okay. These bonds are issued to raise the philanthropic funding. In a very simple sense, funding for activities, let's say for the education, for the health and such activities, and which do not return principal at maturity. Maturity basically means time period, and do not pay interest. Now, how examiner can trap you that these zero coupon, zero principal bonds will offer lower interest. So this way, examiner is trying to convince that yes, they are going to offer interest. But please remember, the term itself is self-explanatory. Zero coupon, zero principal. That simply means there won't be any interest, there won't be any principal which you are going to get back. That is the objective. And that's why the government is saying, okay, we will consider it as a CSR activity, because ultimately you are giving it to the society by giving the money to those organizations which are working for society. Now, the companies may spend up to 10% of their total CSR expenditure on such instrument. Let's say a company is supposed to spend, let's say 10 lakh rupee. So up to 1 lakh rupee can be spent on this kind of activity. Next is related to MSP. So as far as MSP and FRP are concerned, just remember 2-3 things. A, MSP is minimum support price. In a very simple sense, government announced these prices and government simply says that we are going to offer you this price. If somehow you get better price in the market, please sell in the market. If no one is willing to offer you better price, then this is the minimum price we are ready to offer you. So this is announced before cropping season, okay, in advance, so that farmer can take informed decision. Now in our country, this MSP is announced for 22 plus 1 crop. What is this plus 1? Plus 1 is basically FRP. FRP means fair and remunerative price, which simply means it is a price which sugarcane farmers will receive. But there is one more difference. First, let me explain the technicalities. So MSP is announced for 22 plus 1. In this case, it is FRP. Okay. Now FRP is for sugarcane. In case of these 22, government will pay the MSP and government will buy those food grains. However, in majority of the cases, the procurement or the purchase is majorly for 2 crops, that is rice and wheat. For other crops, the procurement is not that much high. Okay. Now in case of sugarcane, understand the difference, why we are mentioning it differently. In case of sugarcane, government do not buy the sugarcane. The farmers will sell the sugarcane to the sugar mill owners. What these mill owners are going to do, they are going to produce sugar from it, and now they are going to produce ethanol as well. So government is saying, we will announce the price. The price will be paid by the sugar mill owners. To whom? To the sugarcane farmers. So 3 parties are there in this case. Government is there, sugar mill owners are there, and farmers are there. Farmers are going to sell their sugarcane to sugar mill owners. Sugar mill owners will pay the price to these farmers. What price? The price which is fixed by the government. What is the name of that price? That price is FRP. There is one more difference. FRP is legally backed. In a very simple sense, there is a legal provision for FRP. For other crops, there is no legal provision. That's why you might have noticed whenever there is a farm protest, farmers usually say legalize MSP. But there are major issues related to legalization of MSP. One such issue is that once it is legalized, that simply means government will be bound to pay it. So that will create more legal as well as financial obligation. Apart from that, there is one more issue that is related to WTO, but we will discuss that in some other lecture right now. Otherwise, it will be too lengthy to cover this entire magazine. Okay, so we have covered MSP as well as FRP. Now understand, in case of FRP, remember one more term, that is recovery rate. What is the concept of recovery rate in case of sugarcane? In a very simple sense, how sweet is that sugarcane? How much sugar can be extracted from that? If recovery rate is higher, of course the sugar mills need to pay higher price. If the recovery rate is lesser, so sugar mill owners can offer lesser price. That's quite logical, because ultimately sugarcane is a raw material for the production of the final output, that is sugar. Next is related to the mission for cotton productivity. So to improve the cotton productivity, the central government has announced this mission, and this will be implemented from 2026-27 to 2030-31. The name is self-explanatory for productivity. So how we are going to focus and on what areas we are going to focus? So we want to increase productivity using the high yield variety of the seeds. Apart from that, we want to set up cotton quality testing infrastructure. We want to improve our technology. That is the focus. Now understand, examiner can set a trap that this mission will be initially implemented throughout entire country, but remember, it will be implemented to cover 140 district and 14 cotton producing states. So 14 and then 140. That is the major aspect in this case. Rest of the things are quite common. I mean, you can apply common sense in this case as well. Next is related to high level committee. So recently the government had set up high level committee to study the changes in the demography because of the illegal immigration. So as per the government, basically illegal immigrants are entering into our country, and that's why the demography is changing. So to address this issue, the government had set up high level committee. Now the chairperson of this committee is important. Direct statement can be framed from this. The committee will be chaired by Justice Prakash Prabhakar Navlekar. So just remember first 2 terms, that is Justice Prakash Prabhakar. Next is related to IR section. So in IR section, the Prime Minister visited various countries. From that perspective, it is important. So Prime Minister first visited UAE. Now understand, UAE recently decided to exit from OPEC. What is OPEC? Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. In a very simple sense, it is a grouping of petroleum producing countries. What is the intention behind this grouping? The intention is to control the production of petrol. Why to control? Because if it will be produced in excess quantity, then the price will go down. So they try to control the price by controlling the output. However, UAE said that we want to produce more, and that's why they said, okay, we don't want to be part of this grouping. Now UAE is out of this. That simply means UAE can produce more and more. India said, you want to produce more, you have resources, we need more stable partners to purchase our oil, let's have a deal. Now, why it is so significant from India's perspective? Understand, our country is heavily dependent on the import of oil. Be it edible oil, be it crude oil, we are heavily dependent. For example, for crude oil, we are dependent. Roughly 85% of our crude oil demand is met through import. As far as edible oil is concerned, roughly 60% demand is met through import. So we are simply collaborating with countries like UAE to make sure that we have regular stable supply. Apart from that, we are also building reserves so that we can use those reserves in emergency purpose. For that purpose, there is a concept of SPR. What is SPR? Strategic Petroleum Reserve. After that, Prime Minister visited Italy. Again, in that case, we had certain agreements, but nothing which can be asked directly. Apart from that, Prime Minister also visited Netherlands and Sweden, then Norway. Now, in this case, understand one more summit was there. That was third India-Nordic summit, which was organized in Oslo. The first was organized in Stockholm and second one was organized in Copenhagen. And last news is related to the supply of the critical minerals. So recently, India had signed an agreement, and the name of the agreement is quite important. It is securing of supply in the mining and processing of critical minerals and rare earths. Now, in the recent UPSC 2026 prelims exam also, there was a question on rare earth and critical minerals. Let me simplify that. See, critical minerals are those minerals on which a country is heavily dependent on others. They are critical for economy and the country is dependent on others. So therefore, the term critical mineral is different for different countries depending on their resource availability and depending on their uses. India had issued a list of 30 critical minerals which are very crucial for our economy and for which we are dependent on other country. That means for their supply chain we are dependent. On the other hand, there is one more term, rare earth element. These are 17 and they are same for everyone. Why they are called rare? Because it is not that their availability is rare. They are available, but the extraction is quite difficult. Why extraction is quite difficult? Because they require huge amount of investment. They require huge, advanced technology. China is the leading player in this case. So that's all for this. Now we have covered various articles from the PRS and from the PIB. I hope that it will help you in your UPSC prelims as well as in your UPSC mains preparation. The PDF of this lecture is available on the Telegram channel as well as on the app. The link is given in the description box. Thank you, and that's all for today.